Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chapter 1. This is our very first chapter in the course, and as we begin with this, give you guys a little kind of heads up on what we're doing here. So we're going to be working with an introduction to anatomy and physiology. This is a foundational chapter. The stuff learned in this chapter is used throughout the entire course of A&P 1 and 2, so definitely important that we learn this and take time to understand it. Now, I'm going to preface it with I never said it'd be easy. I only said it would be worth it. And that's how we're going to want to approach this. It's not going to be easy, but it is worth it when you work towards your goals, okay? So let's get started and let's jump into it. Now, first thing I want to do is to get you guys started with the chapter objectives. The course objectives, this is like a list of things that I'm required to teach. I will sometimes go beyond these to add more detail, but these are the minimum. There will be something from every one of these. This list of 11 things will be something from each one of these on the test. And it will be on there, okay? Now, the idea is, as we run through it, please note that you can use this as a checklist, kind of like a study guide, is can you verbally actually do these objectives? Can you define abdominal pelvic regions and quadrants? Can you explain the importance of homeostatic control mechanisms and operation negative positive feedback loops? Can you do that? Can you explain homeostasis? Okay, things like that. Okay, now, so what we want to make sure we do, guys, is really get started with the course that we're doing, and this course is Anatomy and Physiology. Anatomy and Physiology is the course that we're learning, and this course is a double whammy. It is two different distinctive sciences, one of which is anatomy, one of which is physiology. Now, let's just say, if you will, that your car was acting up and you went to go get it looked at by a mechanic. And the mechanic comes out and they don't know the names of the parts of the car. They give it nicknames and other names. They don't call it by the right thing. You even know it's not the right thing. Is like, oh, your whatsamajigget is acting up, and I'm going to need to put a new whatchamacallit on it. And you're like, I know that's not the name of these things. Then you might have serious questions and doubts whether this person is an adequate mechanic. Versus if they walked in and said, oh, your oil sending unit is malfunctioning, we're going to need to replace it, and you'll be good. You're like, okay, I might trust this person. So the kind of think of that, like if you wouldn't trust a person who doesn't even know the names of the parts of a car, how would you trust a healthcare professional who doesn't know their anatomy and physiology? Anatomy and physiology is fundamental and foundational to healthcare. So anatomy, that's like studying the parts of a car. So if you know the parts of a car engine, it's a lot easier. That's one of the things you do is you learn the parts, so you learn how to work on them. You also have to learn how they function. Okay, anatomy is like studying the parts of a car. Physiology is like studying how the car parts work. Anatomy is study of structure. Physiology is study of functions. Okay, this is kind of an interesting thing when we put this together. Now, I always like to preface my next statement about how anatomy and physiology, how they relate to each other, is I like to reference it like this. You wouldn't eat peas with a hammer, and you wouldn't drive nails with a fork. That a tool's structure determines how we would use it. Anatomy determines physiology. Structure dictates or determines the function of things. Form fits function. The structure of something fits how it works. Okay? They are related to each other. Anatomy determines physiology, so to speak. Okay? Very important that we know that form fits function and that those two go hand in glove with each other. Okay? So, all right, now let's look at ways we can study anatomy. Now, ways we can study anatomy is gross anatomy. Now, imagine I had a huge zit on my nose, just this big, gross zit. Well, that would be big and gross. Well, gross anatomy is large anatomy. Macroscopic anatomy, a study of large structures like the organs in the body. Microscopic would be looking at the microscopic level of these things. Like if I took a piece of the intestines out, sliced it super thin, put it on a microscope slide and looked at it under a microscope like what we're doing in lab right now, that is microscopic anatomy, okay? So microscopic anatomy is study of small things. Now, this can be cytology or this could be histology. Cyto means cell. Logos means the study of. Cytology means the study of cells. Histo means tissue. Logos means study of, the study of tissue, histology. Case in point, we may do the cytology on a cancer patient, may do the histopathology on a cancer patient. So we use these words, okay, in healthcare. Okay, how would we tell if somebody's alive? Well, here's some characteristics of life that might apply to them. Some of these apply at certain points or to now. Some of these do not fit every human being, and I'll talk about it. Now, responsiveness, that's an important one. They can respond, that they're alive and they can respond in some way. Adaptability, okay, that's a big one. Growth, the ability to grow. They have grown at some point, their fingernails still grow, their hair still grows, things like that. Reproduction or the ability to reproduce. Well, that is also, some people don't have the ability to reproduce. Some people have endocrine disorders, they can't reproduce. They have developmental disorders, they can't reproduce. But for a normal, happy, healthy, functioning human, yes, reproduction, the ability to at some point in their life. Then also, you can also argue, well, what about postmenopausal females? Okay. Movement, respiration, and metabolism. These are all things that living things generally can do. Now, as I said, reproduction is something that you cannot be able to reproduce. You could have been have a developmental disorder that completely removes your ability to actually reproduce and you're still alive. Okay, it's I don't like I gotta be careful when I talk about that one. That one is up for grabs on, but generally a happy, healthy, normal functioning human who is reproductive age can reproduce, has the ability at at the right time. Now, postmenopausal women, prepubescent children, things like that, no. Okay. Okay. Now, life has some needs. Life, we need oxygen, we need food, nutrients, and we need water. Now, oxygen, of course, you don't have very long without oxygen. You're dead like 3 minutes. Food, nutrients, you're going to have that. And water. Water is something we're going to have to keep having. Now, food and nutrients, these be ions. We might call these minerals. Things like sodium, potassium, calcium, your acids and bases. Organic compounds, the foods like carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, that kind of stuff. And water. We need those things. Okay, let's talk about this. Now, levels of organization, I like to describe it kind of like the Russian nested dolls. If you've ever seen the Russian nested dolls where you have the large doll and you open it up and there's a slightly smaller doll in it, and then you open that slightly smaller doll and there's yet another slightly smaller doll inside of it, on and on and on, smaller, 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 until you get to the smallest doll they have. Okay, that's those Russian nested dolls. That's kind of how this works. Okay, now when we look at it, what we're going to do is we're going to look at it like this. Okay, levels of organization. And we're going to look at it like a pyramid. And we're going to start with a very small thing here. Subatomic particles. And then we're going to make atoms. Let me make a little bit more room there to write the word atoms. And then these atoms come together to make chemicals. And these chemicals come together to make organelles. And the organelles come together to make cells, which is the simplest unit of life. And cells come together to make tissues, like what we're seeing in lab. And tissues make organs. And organs come together to make organ systems. And the organ systems come together to make the organism human. Okay, a human. Okay. Learn these, get them down, biggest to smallest, smallest to biggest, be able to go in any order, okay? It matters, so get them down in order, okay? Okay, now, what we want to be able to do is subatomic particles, protons, neutrons, electrons, they combine to make atoms. Atoms come together from being put together by subatomic particles to make chemicals. Chemicals come together to make organelles. Organelles come together to make cells. Cells, smallest unit of life. Tissues come together, so cells come together to make tissues. That can be epithelia, connective muscle, or nervous tissue. Then we have organs. That's a bunch of tissues working together. We have organ systems, a bunch of organs working together. You have 11 of them. And then the organism is made up of all the organ systems working together. A human, you, your patient, your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, the person you love the most, your patient. These are all humans. Never forget that your patient is a human. And you could kind of see in this in a little bit more simplified version than what I did. Mine was a little bit more complicated than these levels were, but this kind of shows you the nested nature of this, how one is nested in the other. Okay. Now, if we alter a smaller level, we can affect the next levels. We can affect them in ways. An alternation to a smaller level, like a change to the chemistry, can change the organism. We can die with changes to the chemistry. If our acid-base balance gets off, if our electrolytes levels gets off, if we have a genetic disease, which is ultimately down to the nature of that is chemical with the DNA, then we could die. It could be fatal, or it could cause diseases that have dramatic impacts on the body. Okay, so most of the diseases will be chemical at root. Even if a bacteria is causing it, there will be chemistry involved in the disease, okay? It's usually the chemistry levels where all these diseases are happening, okay? Now, one of the things I like to make sure we learn is the organ systems. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to stop after the organ systems, but when we stop here, what I want you to be able to do is be able to match for every organ system we cover, be able to match the organs to its functions, okay? Now, starting off, the organs of the integumentary system, skin, hair, sweat glands, and nails, which these help me to function to protect against the environmental hazards, helps regulate body temperature, and provide sensory information, okay? All right. Now, in the skeletal system, our bones, our cartilages, our ligaments, and our bone marrow, all of this helps to provide support and protection for other tissues, store calcium and other minerals, and form blood cells. Our muscular system, the skeletal muscles and tendons, they provide movement, they provide protection and support for other tissues, they generate heat, and that maintains body temperature. Okay. The nervous system, our brain, spinal cord, peripheral nerves, and sense organs, they're going to help function to direct immediate responses to stimuli. They're going to coordinate, moderate activities of other organ systems, and they're going to provide interpret sensory information about external or internal conditions. The pituitary gland, that's going to help me with being one of the organs, the thyroid gland, the pancreas, the adrenal glands, and gonads, to name a few of these. The endocrine tissues that are also found in other systems. These are some of the major organs. These aren't all of them. We will spend A and P2 learning all this. They will direct long-term changes, long-term stuff. They will direct the long-term developmental changes, things like that. They're going to help with that kind of stuff. Okay, long-term changes, activities of other organ systems like puberty. They're going to adjust metabolic activity and energy usage, like in diabetes. They're going to control structural and functional changes during development, like when you develop embryonic development, that kind of stuff. All right, now cardiovascular, heart, blood vessels. That's going to help distribute blood cells, water, and any dissolved materials like nutrients, waste, oxygen, and carbon dioxide. This is also going to distribute heat and assist to control body temperature. So that's one of the things it's going to do. Our lymphatic system, our organs will be spleen, thymus, lymphatic vessels, lymph nodes, and tonsils, and it will help me defend against infections and diseases, which will help return tissue fluids to the bloodstream as well. Return tissue fluids. Any fluids that tissues lose get sent back to the bloodstream using lymphatic. All right, now respiratory system. Our organs will be nasal cavity, sinuses, larynx, trachea, bronchi, lungs, and alveoli. It will function to help deliver air to the alveoli. That's the site of gas exchange. It's going to help me provide oxygen to my bloodstream. It's going to help remove carbon dioxide from the blood, and it's going to help produce sounds for communication. Our digestive system is going to contain our teeth, tongue, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestines, large intestine, liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. It will function to process and digest food, absorb and conserve water, absorb nutrients, and store energy reserves. Our urinary system is going to contain our kidneys, ureters, urinary bladder, and the urethra. It's going to help excrete waste products from the blood. It's going to control water balance by regulating the volume of urine that is produced. That means you're going to control your blood volume by peeing out more or less water. We're going to store urine prior to a voluntary elimination. That's normal function. And we're going to regulate the ion and pH concentration of blood. We're going to look at the reproductive system for male and female. Male, the testes, the epididymis, the ductus deferentia, the seminal vesicles, the prostate, the penis, the scrotum. We're going to see it functions to produce sex cells, the sperm, and seminal fluids, semen, and hormones, and also involved in sexual intercourse. We're going to see that the female contains ovaries, the uterine tubes, the uterus, the vagina, the labia, the clitoris, the mammary glands. It's going to help produce female sex cells, the oocytes. It's going to support developing embryo from conception to delivery using the uterus. It's going to provide milk to nourish an infant, and it's also going to be involved in sexual intercourse. Now, lastly, we want to look at all 11 organ systems here. You can see them all as an image as you study. I like the fact that this is more inclusive now, and it has various different ethnicities and sexes. All right, now the nervous system and endocrine system, last thing I want to talk about today in this first lecture anyway, is the nervous system. It does quick actions for short term, where endocrine does long-term, long actions that take a long time. Slow to act, long to last. Now think of this as the tortoise and the hare. The nervous system is the hare, the rabbit, the tortoise and the hare. Remember, the tortoise and the hare were getting in a race, and the rabbit, the hare, was like, I'm so fast. He takes off, and he's like, I'm so far ahead, I can take a nap and still win. So he stops and takes a nap, and the tortoise never stops. Slow and steady wins the race. The tortoise just keeps going, and eventually the hare, the rabbit, oversleeps. He wakes up. He starts to run, but too late. He was too far behind. His running, he could not catch up, and he lost the race. Slow and steady won the race. The nervous system is the hare, very fast. But the endocrine is slow and steady wins the race. Okay? Now, this is where we're going to stop in our first lecture, and then we'll pick up in our next with homeostasis.